knew Pandora's box was made out of plastic and steel? That's right, today we're going to be taking a look at the Pandora ATX. This is Bitfenix's latest case, an ATX version of their very popular Pandora Micro ATX case. Unlike the Micro ATX version of this case, the ATX version is built primarily of steel. This is good if you're going to use magnetic LED strips or something like that, but if you're looking for the brushed aluminum look of the Micro ATX Pandora, this case does not have exactly the same finish. It does have a nice sort of baked on matte black metal finish, but it is steel and not aluminum, so be aware of that. However, the other parts of the unique style of Pandora are carried over very effectively, I think, to the Pandora ATX. The curved front panels and that sort of distinctive look of the front of the case and the way that that works. The recessed front LCD display, the Icon 2.5-inch LCD, which is an optional piece. All of this is faithful to the original Pandora Micro ATX case that this is based on. This is just the full ATX version. Now, the Pandora ATX supports a plurality of cooling options as well, everything from 360mm radiator support in two places. You can do it in the front or the top, but it does actually come with custom loop mounts for a pump and a reservoir as well. The main side panel is windowed and the power supply is hidden away behind a shelf at the bottom. Also hidden away at the bottom are two additional 3.5-inch hard drive spots. There are three main dust filters on this case, one for the power supply, one in the top, and one in the front. Now, most people I think will configure the fan such that heat is exhausting out the top, so I'm not sure that dust filter really counts for much if you're exhausting air out the top. The front has a dust filter, but to remove the dust filter from the front, you have to slide the filter at the bottom. This probably is fine if your case is on a desk, but if your case is in the floor, this is not going to be super convenient because that dust filter is long. It's as long as a 360mm radiator. So in order to take out the dust filter, you'll have to, slide your case to the edge of the desk, or you'll have to turn your case on its side if it's in the floor, for example, or whatever's convenient. So cleaning it might not be super convenient on the front dust filter. Now, the side panels attach with push pins at the front, meaning that they just sort of snap into place. But on the back edge, there are two thumb screws that actually mount them in place. It seems like an odd combination to me. The Micro ATX used 4 push pins, no thumb screws, and clearly they wanted to keep that when they went to an ATX version. But for carrying this case around at a LAN or something like that, the side panels are just too big, and I don't think the push pins did a good enough job holding it in, so they opted to use 2 push pins at the front and 2 thumb screws at the back to try to get sort of the best of both worlds. The problem with that is that the side can come unpopped at the front, but it's still screwed in at the back, and so you might bend your case if you're not careful. Now, on the Pandora Micro ATX, the whole side would just pop off, so it wasn't really as big of a deal. But I think they probably should have gone with a lip or some kind of locking mechanism to actually prevent the side from coming off. But I do think we have to give Bitfenix some credit here, because a lot of other cases derive most of their rigidity from the sides. And so like the way that the sides lock in place or that snap in place, a lot of the strength of the case comes from the way that the sides snap in. Well, with the way that this is set up here, Bitfenix couldn't do that. So without the sides on this case, this is one of the most sturdy, rigid cases that I've ever felt, and I think the reason that is because the case couldn't get a lot of rigidity from the sides, and so they've opted to build a really sturdy frame for this thing out of steel and not rely so much on the sides for the mechanical strength of the case. In terms of the front panel I/O, there are 2 USB 3 and 2 USB 2.0. I would have liked to see 4 USB 3, but I understand they opted to keep costs low, just have 2 of each. There's also a headphone and microphone jack that's 3.5mm and a power and a reset button. Inside the case, it's designed for showing off your components. There are 2 2.5-inch hard drive mounts and 1 3.5-inch hard drive mount on the bottom shelf that hides the PSU and other associated cabling. The shelf also has a mount for a custom loop water cooler. Behind the motherboard tray is approximately 20mm of cable routing space, though there's a little bit of extra room behind the 2.5-inch bays. That's where they've hidden 2 additional 2.5-inch hard drive mounts. A nice touch with this is that they included a bunch of hook and loop cable ties to help with the cable routing on the rear side, so you can sort of undo those and route your cables and then tie them back down again. So this helps keep the cabling neat even when it's out of sight behind the motherboard. The PSU and cabling is all hidden away at the bottom as well, but there's still room for graphics cards up to 440mm. At the top of the case is room for another 360mm radiator, along with this quick release dust filter. Now this quick release dust filter, or quick release top, or whatever you want to say, this is actually the best dust filter on the whole thing. It would be nice if you could use it as an intake, because it's certainly the easiest dust filter to change, maybe with the warm air exhausting out the front or something like that. But that would be kind of an unusual configuration, because warm air rises, and I think that you would have better efficiency letting the warm air rise. And so even though most people would use this as an exhaust, the dust filter has the effect of helping dampen sound and keep things quiet on the inside of the machine, even though the entire top of the machine is basically a vent. At the rear, there are two rubber grommets, a 120mm fan, and a standard 7-slot ATX layout. Now there's also room for the power supply on the bottom here, and this is where our third and final dust filter is for the power supply intake on the bottom. Unlike the one on the front, this one is easy to change regardless of whether it's on the floor, on the desk, whatever. It just sort of snaps in place, so you can pull it out. It's not really a big deal. One other option I'll also mention for this case is the Icon 2.5-inch LCD screen. Now the front, the plastic is recessed and tinted, so you can actually have a 2.5-inch LCD screen where the logo would normally go, or you can use a stick-on Bitfenix logo to actually just stick the logo there. But if that's not really your thing and you want to have a custom image on the front of the case, well, this Icon 2.5-inch LCD display will totally do that. Although it is optional and it does add to the cost if you want to go with the Icon LCD display. So overall, what's the verdict? How do I think this thing has transitioned from the Micro ATX aluminum version to the steel version? Well, I have to say the steel version is not quite as nice as the aluminum version, but actually Bitfenix has done a lot of stuff that would make this case more appropriate for, custom loop water coolers. And there's a surprising amount of flexibility with this case in terms of what you want to do with it. If you want to show off your components with the window and you want to have magnetic LED lighting and that sort of thing, then this case is a really, really good fit for that. There's tons of room in here to be able to do pretty much whatever you want. If you want a ton of 3.5-inch hard drives for, 6, 8, 10 terabytes of storage, whatever you want to do, that's fine. If you're going to have a lot of 2.5-inch SSDs or 2.5-inch drives, there's room for that too. There's room for basically anything you could want to do here, including the 360mm radiators. In fact, if you wanted to run, 980 Ti or Ti graphics cards with radiators, you could still do that with this case and still have a closed loop cooler on your CPU. You might be able to get away with a 360mm radiator on your CPU, although that would be cutting it close. So overall, I'm really satisfied with this case. I'm really satisfied with the build quality. I'm really satisfied with the finish. Overall, it doesn't quite have the ultra premium feel that the Micro ATX aluminum Pandora had, but it's so much better in other ways for people that are looking for more of a full-featured system. In terms of graphics card compatibility, you're not going to have a problem with that with this case. Some of the very large graphics cards in the old Micro ATX Pandora, that was problematic. With this case, you're not going to have a problem. So the overall verdict on this case is, I like it. It works. It's got a certain aesthetic. If you're looking for that aesthetic, it's got it. If you've got one of these, I'm curious to know what your opinion of it is and what your experiences have been. Please share with us in the forums at techsyndicate.com. I'm Wendell. I'm signing out, and I'll see you later.